It's just standard. Well,
Dude, maybe we could actually just start there.
the
Let's just start
vortex.
there. Yeah. So can you explain like what is that water?
Vortex water?
Yeah.
It's basically just structured water, which means it's like more soluble and more easy to integrate into the body.
Okay.
I don't know like the real science and chemistry behind it, but I think it has like a higher potential energy in like an esoteric sense.
No, let's get esoteric. We're gonna get esoteric.
It feels to me more alive. Like if you think about water in a stream, it's constantly being like eddied and vortexed. And I think when water's super stagnant, it's like in pipes, for example, it dies.
The energy.
It doesn't like being still. It's not in its nature to be still, unless it's frozen, really. So when you vortex it, you're basically like breathing new life into it, oxygenating it, and then you're sort of changing the structure of it, molecular structure, and it becomes more soluble.
And what does that actually do? Like, what is the difference drinking vortexed water versus just like still water?
Increased aura, bro.
Really?
This is totally anecdotal, but the guy who invented this vortexing device called the Vortex Magnetic Energizer, which I have, he claims that people who drink vortex water, they'll do like Kirlian photography on them before and after they're like the image of their aura is like a lot more clean.
You showed me that. Like some dude had this huge structure, like his entire room, just to like vortex his water.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild.
That's what I want to get on. That's like the next level, bro. But like showering in it, like he has a whole system.
Holy shit.
But yeah, I think it's just energetically better for you. But I don't know the science on it.
Yeah.
I just sort of trust how I feel when I drink it. And I definitely feel a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, all these esoteric things that like I was so close-minded to probably like 2 years ago, like they make such a difference. Like the grounding, right? Looking at the sun in the morning and stuff. It's funny, my cousin came here last week and like not on the esoteric wave at all.
Right.
And me and Tyler, my roommate, convinced him to like put his feet on the earth for like 10 minutes and he's like, I feel change. I feel different. And he's like, dude, I haven't touched the ground since like last summer.
Really?
Because he lives in Illinois and like it's cold
Right.
and like you don't go outside. But like actually when your mom visited and we had dinner with her like a couple weeks ago, she said something that just clicked for me. Where I was like, what happens if you like don't connect to the earth for a long time? And she's like, you get depressed. And in that moment, I literally like, I realized I hadn't touched the ground in like a week and I was wearing these shoes with like an inch platform.
Right.
And I felt like energetically throughout my body and my legs, I was like, I feel disconnected.
Yeah.
That shit, like, I was so closed off to it now, but now every morning me and Tyler, we go out and we do jump squats and push-ups to failure and just like ground in the earth.
Yeah.
And the energy throughout the rest of the day is like so different.
Dude, starting your day with grounded sunrise, looking directly into the sun is incredible.
And it's so basic. Like,
Yeah.
you would think that that's just our natural state. But
Yeah.
like, we've forgotten our natural state.
Completely. And every single human on earth that's wearing rubber-soled shoes is literally insulating themselves electrically from the earth, which is hilarious.
And they have no idea.
No idea that they're grounded, or that they're,
Yeah.
not grounded.
And like, when we say grounded, touching the earth, like what, like somebody who's listening to this that is like, what does that even mean? That sounds like some woo-woo stuff. Like, why is it important to
Right.
touch the earth? Like, what's happening?
I mean, well, from just a pure electrical perspective, you're reducing the voltage of your body. Like, you're reducing your electrical potential when you touch the bare earth, because we can conduct electricity through our skin, essentially.
Right.
Like, our bodies are magnetic. So when you like, for example, when you stick your hand, like, if you touch like a an outlet that's not grounded correctly, you get shocked.
Right.
Because our bodies are wired electrically. So when you touch the bare earth, you're literally grounding your body electrically. So you're reducing the voltage of your body, which, I mean, they've done studies on this, that takes your inflammation way down.
Yeah.
And so just from a pure electrical standpoint, you're literally reducing the amount of like buzz just in your body. At least that's how I feel. Whenever I touch the earth, I'm like, oh. It's like jumping into like a nice cold lake or something.
Yeah.
It's literally just refreshing.
I feel it too.
Electrically.
Like whenever I take calls now, I try to take them outside, ideally with my feet on the earth. And I feel like that grounded energy allows me to be more present in the call.
100%.
And it sounds so out there, but like all these things that I once thought were out there are actually reality.
Yeah.
There's this quote, I think Tim Ferriss was like, everything that's esoteric now will be mainstream in 5 years. But I feel like you're on the edge and Nick's on the edge. Like you're on the edge of the frontier of like what is esoteric.
Yeah.
Like when did you turn on to this stuff?
Dude. Well, it really started when I like went on the internet for the first time. Like, I got my first computer in like 8th grade or something. And I remember just, if I ever had a question about how something worked, I would just Google it or go on YouTube. Like, for example, I was really into like engines for a while. And I wanted to know like how like car engines worked. And so I literally I was in like 8th or 9th grade. And I just literally looked it up on YouTube. And there was like, I mean, all the best educational content in the world is on YouTube.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, wow, I can just learn anything. And then, I mean, I'm just curious. So when I get curious about something, I just research it.
Yeah.
I'm really good at researching. And so I'll just go tunnel through the interwebs and find this information. And that like thread sort of just leads you in really interesting directions that you otherwise would never have gone in, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know if I would, I don't think I would know half or even like 90% of what I know today if the internet wasn't a thing. Like I'd probably be
probably
so
99%.
clueless. So clueless.
Yeah.
Realistically, because like back in the day, you had to go to the library, search the library. If they didn't have the information that you were looking for, you were kind of shit out of luck. You know, but now we can literally access any information instantly. It's like insane.
It's wild.
Yeah.
What was like the first out there thing that you opened your mind to? Like really unconventional, like almost a feeling of like, damn, if anybody knew I was like looking this up, they'd be like, what are you doing?
Dude, so when I first went on Facebook, there was this account called The Mind Unleashed. And it was basically all this kind of more out there spirituality stuff. I don't even know how I stumbled across it, but I went deep onto their page and I got pretty into like aliens.
Yeah.
That was the first thing that I got into. I was like, what's the deal with the aliens? You know, like, yeah. What's up? And I got into that. And then that sort of led me down like into like free energy and like, I don't know, kind of like physics, I guess, even though I'm really not like a physicist by any means. Like, yeah. But just theoretically, like, how could this work, you know? And that is a really esoteric rabbit hole that is really fascinating. But yeah, that was sort of the first spark.
Was this like high
probably
school?
Aliens.
High school times?
No, this was probably like 8th grade, 9th grade. Damn. Maybe.
Dude, you were into this early, bro.
Yeah, dude, like I just literally, I'd be like curious about something and I would just go research it online.
Yeah.
And all the information is basically there. Like a lot more information has come online since, 2013, 2014, when I was like a freshman in high school. But it was still mostly there. Like Facebook was really starting to take off
Yeah.
around then. Like it was big then, but within like a couple years, like I would say like maybe 2012 to like 2015, it was like no one was on Facebook, and it was like everyone was on Facebook, like everyone. And then you get this giant network effect, and ideas can just spread so much faster on social networks.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, the early days of Facebook were the glory days, bro.
I was never on it back then. I was just on like Snapchat and Kick.
Oh, Kick, I
I'm a
remember
couple
Kick.
years younger than you, so I think at that time when you were probably 8th grade, because you're 25.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you were in 8th grade, I was like 5th grade, so I was like a couple years behind.
Yeah.
But even like throughout high school and even throughout college, I was never curious about things outside of what I thought my identity to be. And what's interesting is because my identity was so firm and solid on being like the athlete, like the quarterback and all that stuff, that I didn't open up to this stuff until I dropped that identity and I became like nobody. And I was like, wait, I can like learn anything. Like this is crazy.
Right.
But that curiosity that you have, for me, it manifested in sports. Like my friends from home would know this, and like my parents would know this. Like I knew every single player on the Cubs, like the Chicago Cubs, batting average, like batting stance. Like I went deep down the sports rabbit holes. Like I still know like every single NBA player. Like if you turn on a game, I'll be able to tell you every player.
Yeah.
But it's like we have that intrinsic nature of like whatever we're doing, like we're gonna go deep down it. And now that I've like turned on to the spiritual stuff, it's like I'm going deep. Like if you would have told me 2 years ago I'd be reading like the Bhagavad Gita and like listening to Ram Dass, I just would have thought something went drastically wrong.
Right.
I was thinking about that last night. I was like, I was actually doing a voice memo to myself, just like a reflection. I'd never done it. And I was like, what would I have thought of myself 2 years ago of myself today? And I was like, I would have thought something went drastically wrong. Just because of like drop out of college, like online writer, like doing a podcast, like all this random stuff.
Yeah.
But no, that curiosity is like, curiosity is the most powerful thing, because if you're curious enough and you have the desire to learn something, you can go through those tunnels of the interweb and find out anything.
Yes.
So like for you, that curiosity, 8th grade, like when did the curiosity lead you to more of the spiritual stuff?
I think that was like a little later, because I was kind of in the same boat as you, just really focused on athletics, ski racing. Mm-hmm. And so I wasn't really too into that. But in some ways, like, I was kind of exposed to, like, meditation, visualization, affirmations, that kind of stuff during my ski racing career. So I was kind of, like, familiar with the concepts, but I would say, I mean, during this time, like, of like the glory age of Facebook for my generation, I was definitely reading like some more spiritual things, because that account, like Mind Unleashed, they would post stuff, like random stuff too. But in terms of like awakening, that didn't happen till probably like 2020, I would say, realistically. That's when I was like reading some of the more like primary texts, I guess.
What was the catalyst for that?
Dude, well, I burned out from YouTube.
Yeah.
Completely burned out. And I went through like a depression. Also, this was during COVID. And this was like I was just like down. And some time went on, and I think like I was just kind of like searching for answers, like what to do next. Because like YouTube was like a big project for me. It was like 3 or 4 years of like, this is my main identity.
Yeah.
This is what I'm doing. Like, this is my career. I was like, this is going to be my career. I'll just be a YouTuber. I didn't want to go to school in the first place. I just wanted to be a YouTuber and drop out and like live that life.
Yeah.
And then I think like in my brain, I convinced myself that like fame was gonna like kill me or something.
You think that's why you burned out?
I think subconsciously I perceived getting famous as like a threat.
It's like pressure of like, who am I becoming and what does that mean?
Yeah. And also, I mean, I'm like I've learned that I'm kind of like more of a private person in a way. And when I was a YouTuber, like in Boulder at school, like everyone on campus basically knew who I was.
Yeah.
And it was like, I felt like I was experiencing what it would be like to be super famous. And I was like, this sucks.
But you didn't like it.
No. You feel like a fish in a fish tank. Like, you can't really, I mean, and I didn't have the tools to like deal with this then, because I hadn't like awoken spiritually really. And so I was just anxious about it. And it sucked. Like every time I'd go to class, like I'd be like, oh my gosh, like someone makes eye contact with you and you know that they know you, but it's a parasocial relationship. So you don't know them, but they know you. And so they treat you like they're your friend and you're their friend, even though you have no idea who they are. And it's just a really weird dynamic that like I was not ready for.
Did you find like it was harder to get deeper with somebody because like they had this image of who you were?
No, not really. Like I'm friends with a lot of people who I met like through YouTube and whatnot. But it was definitely like, it was just jarring, you know? And I would go out and like, you're having a bad day, right? Let's say you're having a bad day, but you're just like some normal dude. It doesn't really matter. No one's like expecting you to be like how you are in front of the camera. But like if you're having a bad day and you're a famous person and people like come up to you like, oh my gosh, like you're this guy, like hi, like can I get a selfie or whatever?
Wow.
You're literally like, you just have to like keep up this persona. It's exhausting.
It's draining.
Yeah. Even though like, I don't think it was necessarily a persona, but it was an identity, you know?
You'd wrap yourself
an ego
up in it.
structure, yeah. And I think like, because of the input I was getting from that, my subconscious like perceived it as a threat, and I completely like shot myself in the
Kind of like
foot.
self-sabotage.
I completely self-sabotage, bro.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, obviously, like, this is not like a career-ending thing. Like, I know I could like go and do YouTube again if it was exciting. It's not really exciting, but so yeah. After I burned out from that, I was like, what am I gonna do? What do I even do next? And at this time, I was really focusing on like art, cinema. That's what I was studying at school too. And I read this book called Catching the Big Fish, David Lynch, Fire. And he was talking about how he does transcendental meditation and it really helps with his art and really helped him like overcome like depression and whatnot. Because I mean, he says like, you can't be depressed and make good work, really.
No.
Like it requires a level of energy and care that, like this idea of like the depressed brooding artist, like you're not gonna make good work if you're depressed.
Right.
Really. And so I was like, that makes a ton of sense. And so I basically just started meditating, and then I was like, holy crap. I'm gonna go deeper on this. But actually, the summer before that, because this was in the fall of 2020. So that summer, like summer 2020, we took a bunch of mushrooms in the desert. That was like the first time the ego shell cracked a little bit.
Yeah.
The structure started to crack a bit. And I was able to like release some energies that had been stuck inside for a while. And that sort of started like the journey. I would say that was like this kind of like turning point of like, okay, we're on this journey now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's basically when later when I got back to school that fall, I started like meditating. And then I read a series of books, Catching the Big Fish, Surrender Experiment, Untethered Soul, and then Autobiography of a Yogi. Heavy hitters.
Yeah.
And that was like the start of like, I don't know, going deeper into this sort of area of ideas.
Dude, there's so many parallels between our stories. Like, I guess I'll start with the burnout thing. I feel like you almost have to hit that low point to then bounce back off of. Like, this is not me, this is Chris Williamson's thing, but he talks about this region beta paradox. Have you heard of this?
Region beta?
Yeah, region beta.
Region beta?
Region beta paradox.
Region beta now.
Yeah, so what he talks about is, the example is, if you had to go 1 mile, you would walk because the pain of walking 1 mile is not enough to get in a car and drive. So walking 1 mile takes you like, 15, 20 minutes? But if you had to go 2 miles, you would get in your car because the pain of walking 2 miles is too much. So you get in your car and you get 2 miles in like 5 minutes. And so you actually go you go 2 miles faster than you would go 1 mile because the pain was greater. And how this relates to like any type of personal growth journey, at least from my experience, is, or what I observe of people is, sometimes you look at people and you're like, I wish they would change, or like, why don't they make a change?
Right.
But it's because the pain of their circumstance is not enough to make a drastic change.
Yes.
But when you hit a rock bottom, now you get in the car and you drive, right?
Yeah.
And you really make a radical change. And the same thing happened for me. Mine was football. My identity was wrapped up in football. And it was 2021, it's my sophomore year, so like 2.5 years ago about. And my identity was so wrapped up in football. I was also wrapped up in this startup social media company, like me and some friends were building, which like both were starting to do well, right? Like the startup, we did a launch. We had no idea what we were doing. We were 19, but like we marketed this launch. We made a social media account. We got like 1,500 followers, like out of 8,000 kids in my school, which is not a big school. We got over 1,000 people to the launch party that we set up, and like we had food catered. We made shirts, people wearing the shirts and wristbands around campus. We were like, we're fucking gonna be Steve Jobs of the Facebook, not Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg in Facebook. We literally thought we were like, we're on the path. We were talking to people at Stanford and Notre Dame to expand, and we thought like we were gonna become Facebook. At the same time, football was starting to turn around. I was struggling with it for a while, just like being a walk-on and like not being athletic enough, etc.
Right.
And the same week we did the launch for the startup and got 1,000 downloads in a day, I made the travel team for the first time for football. Like I won practice player of the week, made the travel team, got to like stay in the hotel with the team, got in the game. It was like garbage time, but I got in like a college football game. So it was like, holy shit, like I'm on the path in football. I'm on the path in this startup. Like everything's great. The next week in practice, I tear my ACL in practice. And the next day, our startup collapses. Like, looking back, it's funny. At the time, it was like absolutely soul crushing.
Yeah.
But like we imploded from the inside out. Like there was disagreements. Our founder, my really good friend, like really burned out bad. And like I was teetering with burnout. And I think the ACL thing happened because I was so mentally burnt out of football. Like it was the universe like smacking me like you need to listen to this. And so for the next 6 months, just so lost, didn't know what to do. I thought I was going to transfer, thought I was going to stay. Those were like the two main options: either stay, keep playing football, transfer, go play quarterback at a D3 school, because I was like, that will make me happy, like that'll reignite my identity and like sense of self-worth by like going from bottom of the depth chart to like being the guy again, because I was the guy in high school, quarterback. But the third option was like quitting football. And I wasn't playing around with that option because it just seemed so unrealistic until I found Joe Rogan, Michael Pollan, and Paul Stamets. And my curiosity was like taking me to mushrooms for some reason because I felt so lost. And I decided to take mushrooms by myself for the first time. And I had
by yourself?
Yeah.
Dude, that's brave.
I was so scared, bro.
How much?
I had like 2.5 grams.
Okay.
And I only took 1 gram to start because I was scared. Like I ate like a little bit of it.
Okay.
And I was starting to like get some like trippy ideas. I was starting to think really deeply, and I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna take the rest. So I took the rest. And that was the moment when, like you said, like the ego, the shell of the ego started to crack open. And I was like, holy shit, who am I? Like, this label I've been putting on myself of like athlete football player that I thought was so good, so prestigious, gave me status, was limiting who I could become.
Right.
And then I just realized that I have a bias for thinking really long term. Like even football was always like, okay, what's the next step? Like I'm playing high school to get to college. I'm playing college to get to the NFL.
Yeah.
And then when I was in this psychedelic state where like the ego didn't dissolve, it wasn't enough to dissolve the ego, but it was enough to like question my identity. And I was like, I'm only 20 at this point. Like I could become anybody if I let this go. And so I decided to let it go. And then I didn't know it at the time, but that was the catalyst for an eventual spiritual journey. And I guess one more thing to add on is after that, I start like working on myself. I start reading for the first time ever.
Right.
And I read this book called The Code of the Extraordinary Mind by Vishen Lakhiani. He runs a company called Mind Valley. It's kind of like a spiritual type of company.
I've heard of Mind Valley.
And there's an exercise in the book called like the 12 areas of life balance. I rated them at the time. Most were like 5 to 7, probably like finances, health, like relationships, whatever. Spirituality, I ranked as a 1 because I just like dismissed it as like, that's just nonsense.
Right.
I reread the book this year, did the exercise without seeing previous answers. Spirituality was at like an 8 or 9 and every other area was raised too. And I'm like, that is the big domino that makes all the other dominoes fall.
Yes.
And so that's a long-winded way to say like we're very similar in terms of like this spiritual journey. But so you kind of mentioned that those first couple books were Michael Singer and then Autobiography of a Yogi. Would you say like those were your first like teachers, spiritual teachers that opened you to these ideas?
100%. Michael Singer is definitely like top guru, top G in my mind, you know what I mean? But then like Yogananda, dude, oh my gosh.
I can't wait to read that.
Bro, I'm so excited for you to read it because, it's an incredible book. And yeah, those were really the first kind of 2 people, well, I mean, initially Michael Singer, who just like, because he lives this philosophy and his life is so interesting.
Incredible.
Yeah, it's the most incredible story. And so it was like a different way to approach life that I found just so compelling, that resonated very deeply. I was like, yes, this is the way to live, you know? But yeah, there's many gurus on the path. I feel like I really still haven't found like my real guru.
Interesting.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I still feel like I'm searching for my real guru. And maybe I'll never find him, but maybe I will. We'll see.
Maybe the guru is you.
That's the other thing too, is like maybe, I can just be my own guru.
Dude, I heard Ram Dass talk about this the other day. It was actually him explaining the Bhagavad Gita, just to like give it context. And he talked about like the original teachings of Christianity contained, and I could be off here, but I'm pretty sure that's what he said, contained teachings about karma. And the church took out those teachings because it implied that every single person could be their own guru and like their own spiritual teacher.
Right.
But for the church to maintain power, they took that stuff out.
Right.
But that idea of like you being your own guru is
Sovereign.
it's all inside of you. You just have to like look forward and like get yourself out of the way.
100%.
So what does that look like for you now? Because now it's been like, what, 3-4 years since you started finding these books and stuff. Like, what have the last 4 years been like on this, now that you've been exposed to the spiritual path?
Yeah, I would say life is much better, flowing a lot easier. And it's funny that you say that like the church removed that stuff from the Bible, because they've removed so many other books too. Like the book of or the Gospel of Thomas, a lot of the other like Gnostic gospels, they just took out, which I haven't like read, but I've heard that they're like kind of contradictory to what the church really says, which is fascinating. it's such a tool for control.
Yeah.
Organized religion. And it's so funny because, like, if you think about it from first principles, like all these gurus who, they have cities, right? They have powers, apparently. I haven't had I've had some synchronicities that have happened that are like completely unexplainable that
Same.
I'm like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
You're talking to me.
Yeah.
Okay. But I haven't had like the personification of that in like a guru. Like I haven't had a guru be like, you were thinking about your mom last night as you were out under the stars, like in Ram Dass's case. And so like, I can't say for sure that that type of person actually exists because I haven't experienced that.
Yeah.
But I think that type of person does, like the true avatar, the manifestation of like actual enlightenment, like pure reflection of God. Like from first principles, that person should exist. But if that person does exist, then we should also be able to achieve that.
Yes.
If that's even a thing that is achievable. Like I don't think that frame of mind, like achieve that,
I feel like
implies someone and something to be achieved, an achiever, which I think is incompatible with that state of mind.
exactly. And this is all theory because like we haven't experienced it, but
Yeah.
I actually feel like reaching that state is more of like a subtractive process than an additive one. It's like not something to be achieved,
Right.
it's something to be let go of.
Right.
Because these people, like even David Hawkins, like you could even say like Maharaji and like these people, like they had like no sense of self. Like they were just one with everything.
Right.
They were just pure consciousness.
Right.
And so the achieving thing I feel like is the trap of the ego.
100%.
And that's like the trap of like spiritual development, I feel
Yes.
like, because you get in this mindset of like, oh, I have to go up the levels of consciousness. I have to ascend. But like that's just an ego trap.
It is. 100%. Yeah, like progressing on the spiritual path, I think is kind of an oxymoron because there's nowhere to go.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just something to realize. But yeah, these days, I mean, I'm doing a lot of meditation and a lot of karma yoga.
What is karma yoga?
It's basically, karma means action. So it's like, in the Bhagavad Gita they talk about this, but there's different like types of yoga. But I feel like I'm going down this sort of karma yoga path, which is like, you know, you're essentially serving through action. There's bhakti yoga, which is like you're serving through love, which is like, I mean, I think that was Yogananda's kind of path, was like just true devotion. But like Gandhi, for example, was more of like the karmic yoga path. Like he was freeing India, you know, through his actions. And so taking like enlightened action is kind of like what that path is about. And so I feel like I'm kind of going down that path with like business, and that sort of thing. And so it's like a moment to moment thing. Like every single moment is like, all right, what's most exciting here? What action can I take that's gonna, you know, how can I follow this thread of like this divine action throughout my days? And it's really fun, man. It's like a game. It's kind of like a game.
Yeah.
In a way. But you can, like, I watch myself get attached to things still, and I'm like, I'm getting attached again. Like,
Well, you have awareness about it though.
yes,
Right?
which is true, which is different
Yeah.
this time than like the last time I tried to like really start a business. I feel like I was just so attached to it, like grabbing so hard to it that I like crushed it under my own weight.
Dude, this is why I think you'd like David Hawkins' work. Letting go. I just read this chapter and I posted a tweet about it. it's so interesting. He doesn't talk about himself saying like the word I. He was like, there was a goal, or like there was a desire to have an apartment. And he was like, what you do with this letting go goal achieving process is you define exactly what you want. You define all the minor details of what you want. And then you completely surrender the desire to achieving it. And you completely enter this state of equanimity of like, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
Right.
But like that is the tricky thing with entrepreneurship, because you get so attached to this idea of like what it could become.
Right.
But then you end up chasing and like putting it on this pedestal of like, I want to have a $1 million a year startup, or I want to have $1 million a year like business.
Yeah.
And then by putting it on the pedestal, you get in this cycle of chasing.
Yeah.
Rather than just like
you get attached,
accepting that it's already happened,
right.
and then letting time just catch up to it.
Right.
That's what Tej Dosa talks about a lot. I've been getting into his stuff, and it's all in line with like these spiritual teachers.
Yes. Yeah, that's real. And there's this guy who you'd probably really like. His name's Daryl Anka.
I haven't heard of him.
He channels an alien named Bashar. Well, you can't prove that it's an alien, but it's a fifth dimensional intelligence, let's just say.
Yeah.
It could just be like a manifestation of his higher mind, or like his subconscious or something. But either way, like the actual content of what he's saying really resonates with me. Doesn't really matter if he's an alien, but I like to think it's that extraterrestrial intelligence that's being channeled through him. And he has what he calls the formula.
You posted this on Twitter.
I posted
yesterday,
this
right?
yesterday, yeah.
I was going to ask you about it.
And yes, this is what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis in terms of like pathfinding, I guess, you know? And this formula is basically like, in every single moment, you have an option to take action on something. You have a choice. So you should take action on the thing that excites you the most. Mm-hmm. Because the frequency of excitement is what your higher self is using to communicate to you where you need to go. And so in every single moment, you can choose to take an action based on what's exciting you the most. And then you take that action and you go as far as you can with it to the best of your ability. But you have to have no insistence on the outcome. Because if you're insisting on a specific outcome, you might be blocking off a potential outcome that would be way better than what you're trying to manifest. And I was like, wow, that makes so much sense. And it's such a trap. Like, you think like, oh, this is my goal. This is what needs to happen.
Yeah.
And it's so like ignorant to think that that is like what needs to happen. Like,
yeah,
what needs to happen when we're in this complex ecosystem of like, it's just an insane world, and you're like, oh, this is what needs to happen.
Yeah.
I know. With my limited understanding and perspective, like, I know.
Yeah.
But that's kind of a trap, because like you could end up in such a, like with YouTube, perfect example. I was like, I need to be a YouTuber. That needs to be my career. Like, I need to do this. And
that's where all the anxiety comes in too.
Yes.
Right.
Because then you have this pressure on yourself.
Yeah.
That doesn't even
all
exist.
Self-inflicted pressure. It doesn't exist. It's just the mind.
Yeah. It's a waste of energy.
Yeah.
Basically. And I mean, they talk about this in the Bhagavad Gita too. It's like, you have the right to your labor, but not the fruits of your labor.
Yes, that was a banger.
Banger.
Yeah.
Absolute banger.
Yeah. I underlined that. I was like, star. Like, this is good.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the same principle, which is kind of fascinating that as a Sani alien channeling this guy is saying the same thing as the Bhagavad Gita, which is saying the same thing as like every other religion based, like Buddhism, everything.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, I think that formula is incredibly powerful, really good way to live life. I mean, you get these insane synchronicities from just following it, and you're like, okay.
What if some of those synchronicities been like that are just like, this is just not possible? Like, it's possible because it happened, but it's like, this is God. Like, this is something else.
I'll tell you like a couple that I've had. One was when I was living in Boulder. I would go on a hike like every day up the same trail. And one day I was listening to this audiobook by Tosha Silver. She's really awesome. And she's telling this story about like a snake or something. I'm just walking along the trail, bro. And she's like, yes, and this snake was like doing this. And literally a snake crossed directly in front of me. I'd never seen a snake on this trail before in my life. And I was going on it every single day. And I was like, you're kidding.
Yeah.
You're kidding. What?
Yeah.
And so that one I was like, statistically, this is highly unlikely. Highly unlikely. And then, dude, the other day, I was with this girl, and we were like walking out of this parking garage. This is like kind of random one, but we're walking out of this parking garage, and she's like walking backwards, looking at me, and she runs into this like post thing at the exact same time that a car honks its horn. So she literally, it was like,
no way.
Yeah, and I was like, the timing of that.
Yeah.
Like it was perfectly timed. And it was so funny. Like we were dying laughing. And I was like, what's really the odds of that?
Yeah.
Like that perfect. But I haven't had any like really like it's still, I think God is like testing me with some of these because it's like that could still be chance.
Just a reminder that he's there.
Yeah, I think he's like just giving me like a test, like.
Yeah.
Because obviously that's a synchronicity.
Yeah.
But in my like logical brain, I'm like, nah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think
kind of like playing
it's
with
a test of faith, kind of. It's like, do you really believe in me? Do you really? It's like so subtle. So subtle sometimes are the signs from God. You know?
Yes.
And it takes like such an acute awareness to be like,
yeah. Because those like synchronicities are probably happening all around us all the time, but we aren't aware enough to know.
Yeah.
We're open enough to know.
100%. Yeah. I mean, the one from Carl Jung is pretty wild when he's like...
What is it?
Have you heard this?
No.
Dude, so in his book, he tells this story about... Because he used to do a lot of like cognitive therapy. And one of his patients was telling him about a dream that she had about like a butterfly or something. And while she's telling this story to Carl Jung, he's just hearing this tapping against the window. He doesn't know what it is. And he eventually gets like so annoyed with it that he opens up the window and the same exact bug falls directly into his hand.
Oh my gosh.
And he goes to her and he's like, was this the bug you're describing? And she was like, yes, that's the exact one from my dream.
Whoa.
And that basically, after that, he spent like the rest of his life trying to prove the existence of God, I think.
Yeah. Well, that's where, I don't know a lot about him or Freud, but I heard that's where he separated himself from Freud. Like he went into like spirituality.
Yes, more
God.
mystical.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that shit. I love seeing someone super rational go into the mystical side of things.
That's probably why we're so interested in Ram Dass, right?
Yeah.
That's why I think I've connected with him and his story so much, is because he had made it by all worldly measures of success, like professor of psychology at Harvard. Like that's the pinnacle of psychology. And I studied psychology in college. And like I thought I'd become, like I was inspired by Jordan Peterson a lot. I was like, I want to maybe become a clinical psychologist.
Right.
But like to go one step beyond it and like him to completely let all that go, like getting fired by Harvard, completely just going out of society to India, like it's so inspiring.
Yeah.
And I know you've had like some ideas about like going to India.
Yes.
Tell me about those. Where's your head
Dude,
at
India
now?
is calling.
Yeah, it seems like it is. Especially because, well, you're reading Ram Dass's autobiography,
Yeah.
which is like to read that, you have to be open to like this. And the fact that you were like, I haven't found my guru, but I'm searching. Like that was in my head earlier, like, maybe he's in India.
I feel like every, spiritual aspirant in the West who's like kind of serious about it.
Yeah.
Wants to like go to India and find a guru and like the guru will like tell him all the answers.
Yeah.
But part of me is skeptical that like I'll just get to India and like never like just go to like I don't even know an Airbnb.
You just sit there for like a week. You're like, what the fuck?
Yeah, like imagine you get to India and it's just like, you get there and you literally just. I mean, I don't think that would happen.
You'd have to completely surrender to it.
Yeah, but there's so much like cultural lore of India, bro, that I want to just go see, even if like, I end up just going to some cool holy places and chilling.
Yeah.
That would be like a huge like I just want to go there and see the country and just see it because like there's an incredible amount of lore that is just like Brindavan, like I gotta go. Dude.
I don't even know what that is.
Dude, it's like this holy city. It was like the lore behind it is that it's where Krishna was born.
Real quick before you go into it, because I'm ignorant to it. Was Krishna like a real figure, like Jesus or the Buddha, or is it just an okay? Yeah,
that's my understanding at least.
Okay.
Yeah, he was like kind of like an avatar, like exactly like that.
Well, actually, David Hawkins' Maps of Consciousness talks about the three great avatars who calibrated at 1,000: Jesus, the Buddha, and Krishna. And one little anecdote, I'll let you continue, is like he talks about because like the scale of consciousness is logarithmic, like it's exponential. One person operating out of love at 500 cancels out 750,000 people operating below 200, which is courage, and most of the world operates below courage. But one person at 1,000, so like Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, they cancel out all of humanity's suffering, essentially. Right. Which is like, that's what it says in the books too. But apparently it's proven with this truth versus falsehood test.
Right, the
calibration.
Muscle testing.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me intuitively, that it would be like, logarithmic or exponential like that.
Yeah.
Just because the universe operates kind of like that.
It's infinite.
But I haven't gotten too deep into the whole muscle testing thing.
I think
Have you tried it?
maybe I'll gift you that book or I'll buy you that book because I couldn't get into David Hawkins before that book. For whatever
Does he
reason.
break down like the studies that they've done on it, or is it sort of just like
he breaks down all the kinesiology studies.
all the studies? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like I need to see the science.
You need to see evidence.
I need to see that. I'm not fully convinced. But
Interesting.
I've heard that.
See, we're operating
you're
out
not
of the
convinced-
rational mind.
Yeah. Well, part of what he says, right, is that if you're not convinced, it won't work anyway. And I'm like,
Yes.
doesn't that appear kind of cultish?
Maybe.
But I don't know. It's just like my rational skeptical mind is like, you have to be careful. Like you have to be like discerning.
Yes. You can't just accept everything blindly.
And it's like, okay, like sure we can calibrate that these guys are like at 1,000 or whatever. Does that maybe it helps people like figure out like, oh, I'm here. I need to like move up. But like this categorization of levels of being, I feel like is kind of like anger and hate is not worse than love.
That's what he says too in the book.
Oh, he says that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I feel like I haven't
open,
read the book.
You'd
so.
be open. I think you'd be really open to that book, Maps of Consciousness.
Okay.
And it's sitting right there. I think
I need to give it the time of day because
Yeah.
I haven't. So I feel like I probably shouldn't even speak on this shit.
What's different? I mean, it's fine, but it's different because like it's coming from like a Western background, right? I feel like that's why it makes more sense to me
Right.
when it's like categorized by numbers. Because I have this Western mind. It makes sense.
Yeah, that's actually true.
You've dove so deep into the Eastern stuff, which I love that stuff too.
Yeah.
But that helps me grasp these concepts more.
Right, okay. That makes sense.
He was a psychologist too, actually.
Interesting.
So I think, you might be turned on to him.
Psychologist.
Yeah.
Psychologists are...
Yeah, the psychologists who go beyond psychology.
Right.
And like they break out of that realm. Yeah, that's fascinating.
I'll have to check it out though. I've been meaning to like do a deeper dive into it.
Yeah.
But I'm also like, wouldn't people trade on this kind of information? Wouldn't people like try to like profit off this? Like if I can be like,
Interesting.
what's the price of Ethereum right now? Or like, I guess it only works in the present moment though, right? You can't, it's not like predictive.
The levels of consciousness?
Yeah, like the muscle testing thing?
No, it's like the present moment, from what I understand.
Right. So I guess you couldn't really trade off it.
You're like trading like a company or something.
Yeah, like if I
Oh,
wanted
like
to
what
like
does Bitcoin
test,
calibrate at? That'd be interesting.
Dude, I'm sure Bitcoin
I don't know how
calibrates
to do the calibration test.
I wonder what Satoshi calibrated at.
Yeah, dude,
Probably
probably
super
1,000.
high.
No, I don't
Probably
know.
super high.
Probably. But he
Realistically.
talks about like, and what is also interesting to me is he talks about like all these different figures throughout history and like what their calibration is. And he has a counter argument of like, how can you calibrate somebody who's dead? It's like these people are not dead, like they're just in the collective consciousness. Right. So it's always persistently present.
Right.
But he gives like the example of like, I'm trying to remember. Like he gives Benjamin Franklin's calibration, like Abraham Lincoln, Gandhi, Rosa Parks, like Mother Teresa, and like where they were at, and explains their actions based on their calibration, and like it makes so much sense.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'll have to read it for sure.
But back to the India thing. Maybe we can end it here on the India thing.
We could keep going too.
I'm down.
I got time.
Okay, yeah, let's do it. Dude, I had this thought recurring in my head the night before I did ayahuasca that I had this fear that I was going to renounce the world and like go to India on a spiritual quest. And I was actually reading the autobiography of Ram Dass the night before. And I ended one chapter, I forget which chapter, but it was Maharaji telling Ram Dass like, you don't have to go to India to do your work. And that was like the confirmation of me, like, I don't have to do it. And then in the trip, I didn't expect to think about, all I thought about was the creator economy for the entire ayahuasca ceremony. It was really like not expected.
Yeah.
I did not expect to go there.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
But I had the thought the night before about going to India.
I think like we in the West romanticize it a lot.
Definitely.
Because it's such a simpler life.
Especially when like, I'm sure you know Steve Jobs' story, right? Like that romanticizes it even more.
100%, yeah. And I think like the romanticization of it is valid.
Yeah.
Because like, I mean, the spiritual depths of India are just like unfathomable. But yeah, it's probably not even necessary. Like I probably don't even need to go to India.
You definitely don't.
But like it excites me to go.
If it excites you, what is that energy saying?
If it's exciting.
Right?
Yeah.
What would have to transpire for you to be like, I'm actually going to do this?
Exit my company.
Really?
I would have to like close the chapter on that, which I think would be in a bit of time. Or who knows, maybe I could just send it.
You could.
And like work remote.
You work remote, so you
Imagine I'm in the ashram. Like,
yeah.
one's like, I'll be at chanting in a minute, guys. Just gotta answer some emails.
I gotta build this funnel.
Yeah, I just gotta code this real quick.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like to do something like that, I would want to be completely detached from any worldly stuff.
Yeah. And I'm like worried that I'm like, maybe like, you know, what if I like settle down, then I never have the time to go to India? That would be such an L. So I probably should prioritize it a bit.
There's no shoulds.
Yeah, true. But nah, I mean, it's definitely something I want to do. I don't know when though, but we should go.
I'm down. I would actually be down. Yeah, at some point.
At some point.
When?
Bro,
My plan for like how to build this creator business for me is like build it so that I could have every summer off.
Okay.
That's like my I wrote a thread about this last week, like 3-quarter work year philosophy.
Yeah.
Where like you build the other 3 quarters, and then 1 quarter, ideally you have enough leverage to the point where you're still making money even while you're traveling. So my plan like this summer is launch 2 digital products which are splintered off a bigger curriculum in start of June. Don't do any cohorts or coaching over the summer, and just continue to write for Cortex, so like make a couple $1,000 a month,
Right.
and just try to live off that and just like completely be like free flowing.
Yeah.
So the ideal is like, how can you do that every year?
Right.
And I think it's definitely possible
100%.
if you build the business in the right way.
Right. You have to build.
And you need leverage.
Yeah. I mean, with code, you can do with subscription SaaS. Like
Definitely.
that's totally possible.
100%
You know.
possible. If you have either code or media, you can do it.
Yeah. It's just a matter of building it.
To build it all first.
Getting it to
Yes.
that point. And when you get to that point, it's like
Yeah.
being able to like have that 10,000 foot view of like, okay, we made it to this point.
Yeah.
It's all right to like take a little breather because like
Right.
I'm
right.
the type of person who would be like, okay, let's double it. Let's
Exactly.
triple it.
And that's the same like attachment trap. Right?
Yes, but it's like kind of what's required to get to that first point.
Probably.
To like push through, to break through with a product or anything. Like
Yeah.
the energy required.
Yeah, it's
is so
insane.
high because the competition's so high.
Yeah. So like, okay, say the goal's manifested, it's done.
Yeah.
Like, what does the entire ecosystem of the product look like? And maybe just give context on like, what is the product? What are you building?
Right. Yeah. Well, it's an AI tool called Satva, which is also Bhagavad Gita reference. But
Really?
Yeah, it's in there.
I didn't even know.
Dude, yeah. You'll get to that. It's in the preface, I think.
I didn't catch it.
Did you read the preface? Or did
No,
you just
I
skip to
skipped
the...
I went straight to the story.
Dude, you're
the,
wild.
The preface, I tried to read the Dhammapada too, and the preface was so long. I was like, I'm just gonna go to the fucking story.
Yeah, they're a little long, but they give so much important context to like the like philosophical and theological like landscape surrounding each of those works.
I see.
But yeah, it's long. It takes time to read it.
Yeah.
But yeah, he meant so it's Sattva is one of the three gunas in Hindu philosophy, which are states of mind. So there's tamas, which is like stagnation or apathy. It's like ice. Like imagine like ice or like a mountain. It's not moving. There's no inertia. And then you have rajas, which is, imagine like a babbling brook, or like a fast-flowing river or the ocean. It's like dynamic, ever-flowing, ever-moving, highly energetic state of mind.
Yeah.
Like I picture like a, kind of like a, imagine like a, like a mom of 3 kids.
Just like bustling.
Yeah,
around.
you're just like, she's just moving.
Yeah.
That's kind of like rajas. And then there's sattva, which is like a mist, like a fine mist or a cloud. It's a very efficient, balanced, like inspired state of mind. And that's basically the vision for the product, is to take people who are tamasic or rajasic and get them into this focused, balanced state of mind so that they can go through the world, not bump into the walls too much. And so to do that, we basically use visualization, scripting, which is like storytelling. You basically like write a story for your life of like where you want to end up and what's important to you. And then like we actually just built out like affirmations. When I say we, it's just me. But
Yeah,
like,
yeah. I like the we. I use this. I do the same for my stuff too.
Yeah, it gives it more like cred.
Yeah. And it gives credit to like something beyond you too.
Right,
So
true.
this is not just me doing this.
Very true, true.
Yeah.
Me and the Lord.
Yeah, literally.
Built the affirmations module, so there's like affirmations and stuff too. But like in its final form, like imagine you're in VR, bro, and you are literally driving your dream car down like the Pacific Coast Highway, with like your wife and kids or something. And you can literally feel the emotion associated with that. And then wake up every day and go out into the world with that image in the back of your head. And like, this is why I'm working for this.
That's incredibly powerful.
That's like that would be like the logical conclusion of it, I think.
Do you fear that like that virtual reality is so good that people wouldn't want to leave that state?
I mean, I think there's biological limits because like you still have to shit, eat, and get money to pay for it.
Yeah.
Until we like invent ways to just literally Matrix. Like if we literally end up Matrix style, like
I don't like that, dude.
you know, syringes in the arms, just literally in a pod, I think people will still prefer reality over virtual reality.
Some people will.
But I don't know, man. I don't know. Can you, I think it would leave a lot on the table. Unless it was literally like you felt like you were in reality. Like if it was literally that high fidelity and you couldn't discern digital reality from physical reality, then perhaps people would never want to leave. But I think we're really far off from that.
Yeah. Dude, that stuff kind of like scares me. Just thinking about like the state of the world if that were to be a thing, like it was so good that it was the same as reality. I've always thought about it like from a sports perspective around like, okay, say there's a kid, like he's maybe kind of fat, like he's not great an athlete, but he can go into a virtual reality and play NBA 2K and become like LeBron James. And like that's his reality. He's LeBron James. And then he has to leave virtual reality. He's just like some random 13-year-old kid. Like, and it was so good that it's real.
Yeah.
Or even on the other end of the spectrum now with like AI and VR, like I feel like so many dudes are just going to like, because people are already living in this cycle of escapism. Any spare moment, they're escaping into social media, they're escaping into Netflix, they're escaping into video games. Imagine the escape was so good. Like you would never go out and pursue a girl. You would never go out and pursue a business. You would just live in this like hedonic state of pleasure forever.
I think pleasure gets boring though, is the thing.
What if it was perpetual pleasure?
Like imagine it, okay, this is a funny would you rather. Would you rather always be about to sneeze or always be about to nut? Like you're about to come.
That's a crazy thought experiment. I mean, probably the second one.
About to come?
Yeah, I think so.
I probably would do that one too. But think about how torturous that would be. The reason pleasure feels good is because
it ends.
Yeah.
Right.
And also, we can experience the other side, which is pain.
Well, with any pleasure comes the pain.
Right. Yeah. Right. Sure. So if you're just living in this fake world where everything is pleasurable, it actually would probably become torturous.
Yeah.
You'd be like, get me the fuck out of here. It's
That's
too
scary. That's why I think we need like God. Like it's like as these like pleasurable things become easier and easier and easier and easier, people need some type of like higher pursuit.
Right. 100%.
So many people are lacking it.
It's coming back. It's making it come back.
I think it is.
With the psychedelic revolution.
I think 2.0, Austin is the place.
The internet. Yes, bro. We were at the rug club the other day. We've been doing these meditations after.
I know, it's wild.
We're all just sitting in the park in this circle, just dudes, like 25-year-old dudes,
crazy.
Just meditating. And I
was thinking about that deeply 2 weeks ago when I saw that. I had to leave right after, so I didn't get to join the meditation, but I saw it and I was like, there's something going on here. Like I feel chills in my body talking about it because the group of people who are sitting in public in the park meditating, it's like the 20 to 30-year-old masculine men. Like that is so paradoxical, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's so powerful because I think a strong society is built by strong men.
Right.
But now this definition of strong men is like open heart, meditating, in touch with God.
Yeah.
And like this seems like the place where that revolution is happening.
100%.
Because it attracts those people.
100%. I think this is the new masculinity.
Yes.
Like it's the synthesis of the 60s where like
yes,
the 60s male went too far
Definitely.
to the softness.
Yes, we lost like a pursuit, like a purpose.
Yeah, I think like, I mean, when you do, it's hard because to balance that deep like spiritual aspect of yourself with like the killer savage instinct of the masculine drive is really hard to reconcile. But I think yes, like this is happening now. Like guys aren't going too far into the like not weird, but like we aren't dipping way too far into the feminine, but we're still, I think it's literally the synthesis. Like you had the 50s man, which is like emotionally unavailable, toxic masculinity, but super strong.
Yeah.
And then you had the 70s male, which was sort of like 70s, 80s male maybe. The boomer male, let's say, that's like sort of the enlightened part of the saculum. You get into like the generational cycles. That kind of male was like too soft. So you had too hard, too soft, and now I think we're getting to the point where it's like just.
Yeah.
It seems like just right. At least this young generation.
There's been such a gap since this stuff because like when I first started finding out about like Ram Dass and the psychedelic revolution, like I would romanticize it a lot. Be like, whoa, that seems like a crazy time to be in.
Yeah.
But it seems like 50 years later now, it's like maybe 50, 60 years later, it's coming full circle. And I think the catalyst is the internet.
100%.
Because now everybody's exposed to these ideas. Me as like a suburban kid from the Midwest, I would have never been turned on to the idea of like psychedelics or any of this stuff.
It's truly a bigger psychedelic revolution than the 60s. But this time around, I think
it's less like bombastic.
Yeah.
And like
it's more measured and more
hopefully.
scientific, I think.
I think so.
Yeah, because I think it's more decentralized. There's no like Timothy Leary. To like rile everyone up. There's no cult like real. I mean, there are like Joe Rogan and like Andrew Huberman.
But they're coming at it from wisdom.
Yeah, they're not trying to start a revolution. It's just slowly percolating through the society.
Right. And even like I was watching Huberman and Tim Ferriss. They did a podcast like maybe a year ago about this. And they were both like talking about psychedelics and the power of them, but they were like tiptoeing a little bit because they were like, we have to be really careful so we don't mess it up again.
Yeah.
So we don't have the war on drugs again.
Right. Which I think is the right way to approach it.
I think so. I mean, hopefully we learned. That would be like wisdom. But I don't know. You think it gets to a point where like everybody is doing psychedelics or at least has been open to the experience?
Dude, I mean, have you talked to any of the Gen Z kids? 'Cause like
I'm Gen Z.
The other Gen Zs, yeah.
My age?
Yeah, or like younger. I'm thinking like my cousin who's like a senior in high school.
I don't talk
like
to
the
many
kids
of those
graduating
types.
high school.
They're so young though. Like I had friends in high school, like when we were 16, that did acid and mushrooms like multiple times. I never did.
Right.
Because I was like terrified of it. But like it wasn't for any type of introspective journey, right?
Yeah,
it was
that's
just
true.
a party.
That's true.
And so I feel like even at that age,
It doesn't really do much.
they're not like emotionally mature enough. And maybe I'm being ignorant, but no, I think it's true. They're not emotionally mature enough to like think about it deeply. So that's why we need these like leaders with wisdom to say like, this is how you do it.
Right.
Right. We need like that almost, there's no rite of passage in society anymore either.
There isn't.
And I think that's probably not a good thing.
Unless you're Jewish and you have a bar mitzvah.
Yeah, but you're only 13 even.
Yeah.
If you're Jewish.
Yeah, which is like so young for that. Now we should bring back like like I forget which culture this is, but they like when you become part of the tribe, you have to put your hand into this mitt full of like carpenter ants or something, and it's like the most painful thing ever.
Yeah.
If you pull your hand out, like you can't be trusted, and you're like a bitch.
Oof.
But if you keep it in, then you're like part of the tribe.
Yeah.
I feel like we need something like that.
Maybe not to that extreme, but yeah, I do agree. Like something to like propel you into manhood, because there's no there's no catalyst for shifting from boy to man. It's like this kind of slow, like gradual thing.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, you look around, like there's so many 50-year-old men with like the emotional maturity of like a 14-year-old dude.
Yeah.
Because there's never been any like true
Children.
Yeah, it's like scary.
Yeah.
That's always what scared me. Like that's what set me down this path too, was like becoming that.
Right. Yeah, and it's almost like I don't think you can really become a fully integrated man without like having some sort of understanding of God or like some spiritual like inclination.
I agree.
Because you're leaving so much power on the table.
Yeah. You're leaving power on the table, and you're gonna worship something.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And like I wrote about this in my newsletter this week, which is funny timing, but like now the average 50-year-old man doesn't worship God. He isn't pursuing a higher purpose. He worships like the NFL team, or like the rock star, the celebrity, or like the Netflix show or the porn. Like, if you don't have that connection, you're going to pursue forms of escapism to become your God.
100%. And it's dangerous out there.
It is
There's
dangerous.
so many things to get distracted by, and so many like destructive paths that you could just so easily fall down. That are so close, like an inch away.
What are some? If I could ask, if you're willing to share, like, what are some of those paths that you feel yourself slipping into sometimes unconsciously?
I've been like, well, in the past I was definitely like addicted to weed at some point. And that's a path that could be very self-destructive too. I mean, I used to watch porn, but I was never like super deep into it. And so, I feel like didn't go down that, like that wasn't in my mind like something that was like gonna be a big problem ever.
Yeah.
But weed, I was like, this is not good.
Yeah, it gets to that point where you're like, I can't keep lying to myself.
Yeah. Lust is just a big one. I think a lot of people struggle with that. It's like,
it's so primitive.
How do you, like we just have such a strong drive for that. And it's so easy to be taken advantage of in the digital world.
Yeah.
It's like you see a thirst trap on Instagram and it's like,
fuck,
it's
here I go.
so hard to just be like, no, swipe away.
It's like, this is the devil. This is the devil.
It's literally like testing you every time.
It
like,
is.
How noble is he? How disciplined is he? How much control does he have over his
and how free are
animal mind? Yes. Which is kind of counterintuitive because it's like if you were like super free, you would just like go do whatever your primal instincts are.
Maybe.
But
that's interesting.
But who is free is the question.
Right.
Because like your higher self, that one is the one that is in charge of this body. Right? Yeah. So like your animal body is subservient to this higher mind, which means your higher mind is like helping you kind of. But if your higher mind's subservient to your base instincts, then your higher mind is being held captive, basically.
Ooh, that's a good frame.
You know?
Yeah.
So.
No, I think it's important though to like talk about where you're still hung up, because A, it helps you reveal where you're not free.
100%.
And B, like even though we're talking about all these like spiritual concepts, it's like I'm still like fucking working through stuff.
Yeah.
Like I can't stop hitting this vape.
Yes.
I haven't hit it for like 2 hours though right now.
Hey.
Which is kind of sick. But no, like that's something where I'm realizing, okay, I'm not free here.
Yeah.
Right? Like the desire to smoke weed at night.
Yeah.
That's something where I'm not free.
Yeah.
So, but the thing is, looking at those things, those addictions, those vices without guilt, that's the key. This is Hawkins talks about it in Maps of Consciousness. There's an addiction chapter, and he gives the example, if you want to stop an addiction, and don't like beat yourself up for it, don't try to like resist it, just simply cultivate awareness of the action. And so he gives the example, like if you can't stop eating cookies, like simply start counting how many cookies you eat a day. So first day you eat like 60, next day you eat 65. Next day you eat like 17, then you eat 50, then you eat like 20. And he's like, just by bringing awareness to the action, it will slowly dissipate by itself. And so I started it today with the vape.
Yeah.
Counting how many times?
Yeah.
I'm at like 55 today. What? Just like one hit, you know?
Okay, yeah. I guess that's pretty like standard.
Well, here I'm kind of justifying.
That's probably. I don't know. I've never vaped really, so like.
That's good. I never did for a long time.
I don't know how much is a lot of vaping.
Well, if you calculate it like yesterday, I didn't count, but like if I had to count yesterday, I probably hit it like. I mean, okay, how many hours was I awake? I was probably awake 16 hours. I probably hit it 10 times and maybe like 20 times an hour. Okay. So like I probably hit it like over 300 times.
It's a couple times a minute-ish.
Yeah, which if you think about how frequent that is, how trapped I am in that desire.
Yeah.
So now instead of like the guilt and the shame, because that's not leading anywhere, it's just awareness.
Right.
And then we'll see where it progresses to.
Yes, that's a really interesting way to deal with that.
That book.
I haven't heard that one before.
I'm telling you, that book is pretty good.
It's so true though. Like literally, just all you need to do is become aware, even if it's like a thought, a negative thought, like I saw that.
Creating space.
Saw that thought.
Yeah.
And then you don't need to, it's just becoming aware. You don't really need to like fight it or try to do something.
Yes.
To that.
Dude, there's this concept I've been thinking about, like widening the gap between situation. This is actually from this book called 3 Steps to Success, I think it's called. It's really interesting. It's widening the gap between situation, emotion, and response, I think are the 3.
Okay.
Because like
that makes sense.
What happens is
yeah.
You're in the situation, you're waiting for the video to fucking load on like a course you're building, and it's like, oh, vape, right? That's what it is. But like if you can just cultivate awareness and space out like the time it's like it's loading, I want to hit the vape. Do I have to? Like that I think is how you break the cycle.
That's split. It's so subtle too.
It's so subtle.
It's so
and that's where
subtle.
you have to be living in this state of like meditative awareness all the time. Like can you be watching yourself all the time?
Yep.
Which it's easy to slip back into the daydream.
It's so easy. It's literally like, you know that feeling when you're falling asleep, but you need to stay awake?
Yes.
And
you're like hanging on by a thread.
And you're like coming back.
Dude, that was me every day in high school math class, bro.
Yes. It's literally that feeling. It's like staying in that state of awareness.
Yeah.
It takes so much like energy, really, and focus to be able to like have that 360 view all the time.
And I think like something that's been helping me stay in the state of awareness is like, I call it like spiritual reminders, where I set up this system with Danny Miranda. Every hour on my phone, an alarm goes off, not a sound, but something pops up with a word I want to embody. So it's like presence, love, wisdom. Every hour that comes up is a little reminder. Right. Then it's like having little practices throughout the day, or leaving spiritual books around the house, or like listening to it before you go to bed. Like those little things to help you remember to stay in the state. Because if I go a couple weeks without reading any spirituality book, I don't listen to any spiritual teachers, I don't meditate, I don't like light any incense, like I'm gonna completely forget. And I'm just gonna get right back into the business anxious, chasing mindset. Yeah. But things go better in business when I'm in the state of awareness. And I don't care about the business. I care about the business, but I'm not attached to it as much. Yeah.
100%. That's when like the fragrance of, like Yogananda describes, like it's like a subtle fragrance of like love, kind of.
It just permeates all the time.
Yes, that like when you're living in that state, and it slowly starts to just percolate out into your world, and then people like they can like smell that.
They can.
You know,
that's why I wrote about this the other week. Like you can tell when somebody has a presence. They radiate something.
Right.
And I think, and I'm not here, but the level of 500, which is love. So there's like below 200, which is most of society, mostly unconscious. 200 to 500 is like courage up to reason. Like that's where the intellect lives. And like in the 400 reason is like Einstein and like the greatest minds.
Interesting.
But above 500 is like the stairway to enlightenment, and when you get above 500, you're like on the path where you stay in that state. And I'm not there.
Right.
But I have an idea of what it is.
Like,
And like
right.
even just being around Danny, like I observe that in him. Like
Right.
it seems, and I don't know like behind the scenes, but it seems that he stays in this state of like presence and love, and it's so admirable.
Right.
It's so admirable.
Yeah. I wonder though if he ever actually gets sad
Right?
sometimes.
That's what I want to know too.
Because I'm sure sometimes it's like.
But even like in the negative emotions, it's probably just acceptance.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm feeling sad. Like Anthony DeMello has a quote in Awareness, and he's like, before enlightenment, I was depressed. After enlightenment, I'm still depressed. And that, I was like, what? I was like,
That's
that
hilarious.
flew way over my head at the time. But it's like the emotions exist in time. Like the emotions, they're temporary. Everything is temporary.
Yeah. I think it's like the attachment to that emotion.
Exactly.
Which
the
causes
identification.
the suffering. You could be completely suffering and not attached to it,
Yeah.
and you're fine.
Yeah.
But if you're so attached to it, then you start suffering over your suffering.
Ooh, then you hit that negative spiral.
Yeah.
The
And that's
rumination.
rumination, depression.
Yeah. That was me in college for so long, before any of this awareness, like having negative thoughts about negative thoughts.
Yeah.
Becoming more anxious because I'm anxious.
Yeah.
And it's like this horrible feedback
Yeah,
loop.
you're creating this like exponential loop to it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And then you almost have to like start to claw yourself back. Like Nick talks about it. You have to claw yourself back to a positive spiral.
Yeah.
And once you're in the positive spiral, the thing about the spiral too, which kind of clicked for me today, I saw a post from one of my friends, Emily, on Instagram. Like, it's an upward spiral because there's still subtle downturns in the spiral.
Yes.
And that is like really powerful because even like yesterday, like for the middle of the day, my energy was so low. It was a little down, but now it's up. And it will be down, and then it will be going up.
100%.
But it's still upward trajectory over like a long enough time.
Yeah. The spiral is a really fascinating form.
Yeah.
Like pattern. And it's so true. Like, you kind of need that reset.
Yeah, new baseline.
Yeah, establish a new baseline and then you keep going.
Yeah.
But it sucks when you feel like, oh, I've fallen all the way back down. Mm-hmm. You know, like I got super sick in January.
Yeah.
Before that, I was like completely blissed out.
Yeah.
I was like feeling so high. And then I got so sick. And I was like, oh my God. Like I'm back to where I was.
Yeah.
But I really wasn't. It was just like a dip.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And like acceptance of the dip.
Yes. Not fighting it like, oh, okay. This is just another like echo of, you know.
Because the guilt and negative feelings around it, they only keep you in the state longer.
Right.
It seems.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, this was sick. I gotta take a piss. I think this is a good place to end it. This was sick. First in-person podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
I wonder how long we went. I have no idea.
Me neither, bro. I know it got slightly darker.
Yeah, sometimes the light changed, but
yeah.
that was dope.
Really good. Really good. I loved it, man.
Fuck yeah.
Awesome conversation.
We'll look back on this in like 10 years and be like, whoa, we did a podcast like